Welcome to Life Talk, a production of Maranatha Ministries, with Shoshannah Frank Rausch, a ministry director at Maranatha, and Jene Gardner, president of Phoenix Rising Counseling Services. These lifelong friends discuss the spiritual and emotional challenges that face us all. Using biblical characters and personalities, they help us see that we are not alone in any of our emotions, positive or negative, and show us how we can be more than conquerors. If you'd like to speak with either Shoshannah or Jene, you can reach them by email at lifetalk@mmchurch.com. And now be blessed by today's presentation of Life Talk.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
So welcome everyone to tonight's episode of Life Talk. So we're gonna do tonight a little different because normally we jump right into a discussion, talk about different topics. Today we're going to do more of a question and answer. We got a lot of questions regarding anxiety. And so I thought it would be good if, we thought it would be good to kind of do a question and answer in between, discussion. So we're going to kind of do this interview style since you're the mental health professional. So we got all the questions, we put them all together, and then I'm just going to sit here and rattle them off to you, and you're going to answer them, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hit me, show.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. So first question we got are anxiety and worry the same, or are they different?
That's a really good question. So it's really kind of interesting because worry is a component of anxiety. So if I was doing an assessment on someone with anxiety, there are questions about, do you have worry that involves more than one thing? Are you worried about more than one thing in your life? And then the second follow-up question on that is, are these worries, are you able to control them? So I thought about, like, in terms of this too, is like worry is a temporary thing. And anxiety is more persistent, so that's kind of the difference between worry and anxiety. And that worry, when you're worried about something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's impacting your daily functioning, where anxiety does limit your functioning because you'll end up avoiding situations that are going to trigger those anxieties. You'll also have excessive fear, and worry is more, it's grounded in reality. It's normal for us to worry. Like, I would probably worry if you weren't worried. I think that worry can be a healthy thing because it kind of helps us to kind of say, okay, let's get out of this, rut, whatever we're doing here. And I think that there's common, like, we could worry about choices that we make, or we can worry about our kids, and worry about them when they're not in our sight, kind of like, oh, I hope they're okay, and I hope that they're having a great time, or you're kind of worried about those things. But it's not to the point where anxiety is often linked with cognitive distortions.
Okay.
And so when I'm meaning like cognitive distortions, it's like where we're jumping to conclusions, we're like imagining the worst case scenario that could ever happen.
So
And
anxiety can more interfere with your actual life, whereas worry is just more of a natural progression. So that kind of leads us into the next question that someone sent us was, does anxiety and worry feed each other?
They do. I think that they do, because you can't have a diagnosis of anxiety without having worry. Worry is a huge component of it. And again, it's about if you're able to control that worry. Okay. So people heard that saying, show, like, where people will say, oh, they're a worry wart. Maybe my grandma was the only one who really said, okay.
No, so, I've heard it a lot growing up.
Yeah, so that phrase is often kind of linked with, like, they're overly, they're just consumed with this worry. And worry does feed into anxiety, and anxiety also feeds into worry. And the thing is that with worry, it's often more specific, where anxiety is very general. Like, we can worry about one specific thing, but generalized anxiety disorder is like, you can worry about a whole host of things that are even sometimes not even rooted in reality. And the other component on that too, Show, that I think is a good point is that worry is in our mind, but anxiety is going to affect your body, your mind, and your emotional state. But I'm also going to throw in there that anxiety will also impact your spiritual life as well, because it will kind of like look at those limitations that you might have and then almost like not have you be as effective as you could be in the kingdom of God because of that anxiety
Right.
that's holding you back. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Next question. Are there certain personality types that are more prone or susceptible to these problems that we've been talking about? So
Yeah, that's a really good question
anxiety,
too.
depression,
Mhm.
any the topics that we've had, is there certain personality types that are more prone?
Yes. So if you're a perfectionist, that's highly linked to anxiety disorders that
Mhm.
need to excel and achieve, where you're almost even like, spending a lot of time on like certain things, and almost this feeling where everything you do is not good enough, so you keep working on it. So that perfectionism is a huge component of that. um Individuals who kind of struggle with low self-esteem, timidness, maybe have more inhibitions. I often see it a lot with introverts,
Mhm.
and sometimes that anxiety is going to look more in that social setting. That's where the anxiety, are they going to judge me? Are they going to accept me? So with that introvertedness, sometimes there is a link there with the anxiety. Um, there's also trauma that can cause anxiety disorders of just being, a fear of getting to know people or kind of putting yourself out there. Stress, people who don't manage stress well. There's also, with that personality type of, they just, I don't know if you've ever encountered individuals that like, they just seem so stressed and on edge all the time. That
I'm
they,
married to one.
I knew you were going to have a good response. I could tell by your face. I was waiting for it. Yeah, right. All right, that's okay, Mike. um, and then also there is a link with people who have a history of substance use as well. That it's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg, but it's like, does anxiety cause people to self-medicate so then they can
Mm.
kind of become addicted, or is the addiction itself that led to anxiety when you've like put the substance down? I'm also going to throw in there that some personalities like ADD, ADHD, if you're diagnosed with that as a kid, that can also manifest as an anxiety disorder as well later in
Mm.
your adult life. So
It
there is a
reminds me,
link
like,
there.
when you were talking about different personality types,
Mhm.
um, like the perfectionist and the
Yeah.
introvert, and it kind of
Mhm.
reminds me of birth order. Have you ever? I cannot
Oh,
remember who
yeah.
wrote the book, but they have the birth order where it's
Mhm.
firstborn, secondborn,
Yeah.
middle child,
Mhm.
baby of the family, and they all have certain personality traits
Mhm.
um, that are more geared towards where they land in their birth order.
Mhm.
Like perfectionist is usually a firstborn.
Mhm.
You have the introvert, which usually ends up being like the middle child. The one
Mhm.
that always kind of shrinks into the background and
Yeah.
is, just kind of flies under the radar. Almost,
Mhm.
I like to call the middle child. I was a middle child growing up. Um, I always like to call him the forgotten child, because
Okay.
you're dealing
Yep.
with the older child and then the baby, and the baby tends to be the extrovert and the,
Mhm.
carefree, and whatever
Yep.
happens, great. And
Mhm.
so you talking about that kind of just, I don't know, it doesn't really,
No, yeah,
it just reminded
I'm
me of
glad you
that
actually
because,
brought that up. Yeah, because I haven't thought about that book in a long time. Because I remember reading that years ago, and so yeah, there's definitely some of those like birth order things,
I think
like
it's
how you were
nurture versus
raised.
nature, right? I mean,
Yes,
when you're talking
yes.
about personality types, there is nature versus nurture, and there are
Mhm.
some things that are just genetic in you, and then
Yes.
there's other things that like trauma, that
Mhm.
can shape who you became, but that's nature. That's something that
Yeah.
that happened to you that kind of shaped,
Mhm.
your personality and how you handle things. So
Right. No, you bring up a really good point, because like there is a genetic predisposition. So if you have anxiety disorders that run in your family, you're already at a higher risk of having anxiety. And is it because there is like, hey, you have the anxiety gene, or is it more because in that modeling of anxiety and what you watched and what you observed by your caregiver, that's how you've learned to cope with stress? That's how you've learned to like manage those situations when you're out. So it is definitely a nature versus nurture. And I another personality trait that kind of comes up is always control. Like if you feel like you have to have control in all things, and when that control isn't there, then it's very anxiety driven, of like it really can send people into a spiral of not knowing. And I think of the pandemic, how that kind of spiraled a lot of individuals that have anxiety, because they couldn't really control, that everything was getting shut down, or they couldn't control these things. And so anytime someone is kind of struggling with that, I usually work with them on, hey, let's focus on the things you can control, and how you can rethink it, or, reframe some of those things that you can't control.
This actually, what you're talking about leads us into the next question. Let me ask it real quick, because you're already kind of touching on it. The person who asked are there certain personality types, they followed it up with, if so, if there are personality types that are prone or susceptible to these problems, what ways can these personalities be aware and also overcome it? And so you were just touching on that as someone who likes to be in control, and that and is dealing with anxiety. So touch on that. What are some ways that that these personalities can not only be aware, but overcome some of the challenges that they might have?
Yeah. So I use a tool in therapy with control and worry with anxiety disorders, and it's actually a business model, but I use it in therapy, and it's very effective. And it's called the circle of concern. And so it's basically like where you draw a small circle and then you draw a bigger circle out like this. And then you're listing like, okay, most of our worries are things that have happened in the past, or things that haven't yet happened. That's where the anxiety is rooted a lot, over our past decisions, our past choices, but also that future oriented, like catastrophizing, imagining the worst thing is
you're not really stuck in the present. You're not really stuck in like what's going on right now. It's what's going to happen, or what did happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a small percentage of what we worry about every day and what we're anxious about that is actually something that we can control in the moment. So that guide is to kind of say, hey, if it hasn't happened yet, and if it's in the past, throw it in the outside big circle and say, there's nothing I can do to fix it. I can't control it. I can't change it. And then those worries or anxieties that you have, put them in the smaller circle. And then that's what you can control, is saying, hey, I can control the way I'm thinking about this. I can control how much I'm interacting in that regard, or what I'm like saying, or who I'm around. So with those personality traits of like, if you're an introvert, if you're melancholy, or I'm trying to think, there's like phlegmatic, if there's different personality traits that you do have, that's how you can overcome it, is by saying, hey, like I need to say, is this thought even true? Is this anxiety true? What's the evidence? Kind of looking at those components of things and saying, if it's something that hasn't happened yet, I need to rethink it. I need to reframe it. And kind of bring myself back into the present of what can I control right now, like in my day, that I can control to kind of help alleviate some of that anxiety. Type A personalities are very much control driven. They like structure. They like the black and white. They like to know what the day is going to be. They like the predictability. So again, back to like what I was saying earlier, is that like, if that control kind of gets off, like you made all these dinner plans and they were great, you've like mapped out the best possible route with less traffic to like get there, and then traffic happens, because it's unexpected, then it can be like where all of a sudden here's this anxiety, oh my God, we're going to be late, like what's going to happen, like you're just kind of working yourself up into this panic because it didn't go exactly as it was planned. And so really through therapy and just kind of being aware of those things, it's like, okay, how can I like work through this where I'm not working myself up into this like big,
so where you're panic. Like, forget it, I'm just going home, we're not going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly.
You're just leading into all the questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it's perfect.
I guess I should have them right in front of me.
because one of the examples I have for the next question is hearing people say that they're an A-type personality, and you actually just brought up the A-type personality.
Yes. Yep.
Is there a way to determine what type of personality you have? Like, I know that there's, like, I know at my company, they do, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like 4 letters, and it kind of lands you in with, okay, you're predominantly this, and then you have some of these qualities, so that lumps you into like an IFMJ or whatever it is. I know we did that. I know that some places do type A, B, C, D. Are there like certain things that you use, or is there like an internet quiz that someone could jump on and take and
Yeah, absolutely. And the big formal one is the Myers-Briggs personality
That's what I'm
assessment.
thinking of, yeah.
Yeah, that is, and it is pricey. So just being able to do it, and usually it is, sometimes therapists like subscribe to the thing and then they'll do it with you in session. What I find that is where it gives you the 4 letters is a website. It's free. It takes about 20 minutes. And I find that it's closely linked to the Myers-Briggs. And that's what I would do in session. And it's actually, I'll give it to you so that you can kind of put it in the comment box.
Oh, okay.
But it's actually 16personalities.com, and it's like the number, not spelled out, 16. And it takes you like 20-ish minutes to kind of complete it. And it will spit out those 4 letters and kind of tell you if you're introverted, if you're more feeling driven, if you're more judgmental driven. And so then it'll kind of break down your personality in terms of your relationships, how they're the strengths and weaknesses in your relationships, with your career, parenting. I think it even has in there. So there's just different components of our roles that we have, and it will break it down for you and kind of give you the strengths and the weaknesses of your personality type. Usually, passive people, if type A people can be very assertive. So even like when we talk about handling anxiety, that it is a lot about how we communicate our needs, how we communicate our boundaries, do we say yes to everything and not, and because we're afraid of saying no, and then we're putting all this on us, and then having this anxiety that's kind of driven, from that too. So there are so many different components that, with passive communication, that we end up not sharing our wants and needs, and then we can kind of get lost in that anxiousness and that worry. So in therapy, I always talk about communication and how it impacts like handling anxiety, because it's huge.
Yeah, I know, like with my therapist, the big thing is communication, but also how you communicate it. Like you had just said, there's certain things that you need to say so that the other person doesn't necessarily feel defensive. There's just proper communication tools, to use so that both points are getting, your point's getting taken, but you're doing it the proper way to because I think the number one issue people have is communicating and communicating properly. A lot of people think they're not heard. Well, sometimes it's because you're not necessarily communicating properly, so the other person is just kind of shutting you out.
Yes. And and communication's a lot too, just about our timing and the delivery, like big time. So sometimes we don't even think about how timing is an effective communication skill. But if you're about to like drop some bomb on your spouse before they're rushing out the door for work, and then you're going to leave something and then get mad because they're not listening to you, okay, well, what could I have done better there? I could have waited until the end of the day, or, started that conversation somewhere. So effective communication is a lot about that, but it does play a big role in our anxiety, and it does play in people with anxiety often in communication. They want to just like get it out, and it's almost like they're not really mindful of how they're communicating it sometimes, and so they're just like, I have to get this out and say it. And irritability is a huge component too sometimes with anxiety, like you're easily irritated. And so in that irritation, we can be putting someone else on the defense because of the way we're just trying to get it out. And so learning how to communicate it effectively will help your anxiety and get you better results.
Yeah, one thing I learned being married to somebody that has a little bit of anxiety is very early on I would text them, hey babe, can we talk when you get home?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not. You should never say those 3 words. Can we talk without some kind of context or being ready to have the conversation right then and there.
And I thought I've actually had to do that and learn that even with when I was supervising people, is like you could do, how most companies have IM or whatever, and you're messaging, hey, when you get a minute, will you stop in my office? They're immediately like, thinking I'm getting fired, like this is the worst. And so I've had to learn
human nature goes worst case scenario immediately.
Exactly. And having to learn, hey, everything is okay. Your job is secure. I just need to see you. Could you come see me when you can? So practicing those conversations, like, hey, everything's okay. It's, so just learning how to do that. And it can kind of help reduce a lot of conflict that maybe could come up in a marriage too, of just learning how, how the effective communication skill is there, and, and it will alleviate a lot of that anxiety. But yes, to answer all of those questions, worry and anxiety do go hand in hand. But the difference is that with anxiety, you're not able to control it without some type of tool, without some type of mechanism or talking it through. Worry, normal worry, it's when it becomes a problem is when it's excessive and you're not able to control it, So those are the big things to kind of remember with the difference between anxiety and worry.
Well, these were good, and I kind of like every once in a while having like a question and answer.
Yeah, I know, that was fun. Next time I'll have to have the questions in front of me, so I'm not answering all of your questions.
I think it's good for everybody to not always just hear us do a dialogue, but to sometimes answer their questions, because I'm just putting this out there. We don't do this show live, so if you're if we're getting questions asked, we can't just stop we just can't stop and answer questions, because we don't do this live. We're both moms and we both work full time, and so we we record whenever we can. So getting questions on our email is great, because then we can do an episode like this and take everyone's questions, put them together, and have a great little question answer for them. So as always, if you have any other questions regarding any of the topics we've talked about, even if it's not a topic we talked about and you have questions and something got triggered and you wanted to know something, please email us, lifetalk@mmchurch.com. I'll have all of our info in the description, as always. Jene's counseling service will be in there. Both of our churches' information will be in there, as well as our email. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, testimonies, anything, email us. We love hearing from our viewers. It makes what we're doing worthwhile, and knowing that we're touching lives. And so please message us. And I had fun. I wasn't doing I wasn't the one in the hot seat. So it was great.
I know. So next time you'll be the one in the hot seat, and I'm gonna we'll have some questions for show of what we need to know, and I'll be the interviewer.
All right, perfect.
I think that's fair, right?
Whatever. I'll do it. Just give me your notes beforehand so I know what I'm answering.
Okay. I got it.
All right. Have a great day. Be blessed, everyone. Bye.